From Anshe Sfard, Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Beshalach, unnecessary prayer. In the Parsha, we find Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher. He's there telling the Jews, don't worry, you'll see what God's going to do for you. You do your job. God will fight for you, and you can be quiet. Don't worry about it. Hashem turns to Moshe and he says, What are you yelling at? What are you praying? Ma titzak elai. Why are you praying? Why are you screaming in prayer? Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yisau. Tell them to get moving. Now the Ibn Ezra, the great Spanish commentator, he's bothered. He says, Moshe is not praying. There's no evidence that Moshe was praying. On the contrary, he told the Jews, don't worry about it, everything will be fine. So he says, maybe it's referring to the Jews. The Jews are the ones who were praying, and Hashem says, well, what are they praying for? Just tell them to move forward. But still, what is this? Why is it ever a problem to pray? You can always pray. What's the problem? So there are all kinds of midrashic answers, and I'd like to share with you the whole array of different possible answers. One has to do with matitzak. It's about how can you pray for them? That there's something wrong with Moshe praying for them. After all, you're the one who claimed that that your coming to Pharaoh only made things worse. You, Moshe, are you worthy of praying? Are you the one who's going to pray? That's one obscure interpretation. The Mechilta. Another possibility in the Mechilta, in the Midrash, is that he says, don't tell me about my children, the Jewish people. I'm going to take care of them. What are you yelling to me for? They're my children. I'm going to do for them. I'll do right. Don't worry about it. Or Matitzaki, what are you praying? They've been answered already. Your prayers already been answered. There's a concept called Terem Nikrao V'Aniyaneh, before they even call. They will be answered. So don't worry about it. The prayers already are answered. There's another midrash that says there's some prayers that are answered even before they start. And that was what happened right here. Another interesting midrashic possibility is that at that time, in the heavens, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers, they came forward and they began to pray on behalf of the Jewish people. So God says, Matitzaki, what are you praying for? The forefathers are already praying. We don't need your prayers. God, they're taking care of it already. The Or HaChaim, the great mystic, he suggests something else. He says, you're trying to pray using the concept of mercy, or asking for mercy, but there can be no mercy here. It's a matter of judgment. They don't deserve to have the sea split for them. What should we do? Tell somebody to jump in. Speak to Nachshon ben Aminadav. Let one of the Jews just jump in. And through that emunah, through the power of the judgment God will look at them and say, look, they have so much faith. Then through that, they will be saved. Some commentators suggest that it's that emunah, it's that faith that they'll show. That's what's going to get them through this. Nothing else. Matitzakilai. Some people suggest that it has to do with the length of prayer. There's an idea that sometimes prayers can be too long, too short. The Gemara in Brachos, there's once a story of someone who went on too long as a cantor, as a chanter, the leader of the services, and someone complained. So the rabbi said, "What? Is he any longer than Moshe? Moshe prayed for 40 days." And one time the chazan was too short, very brief. And the people complained, and the rabbi said, well, is he any shorter than Moshe? Moshe, when he prayed for his sister, he had a one-liner, and then that was his whole prayer. So too over here, maybe it's a question of length. Maybe he was praying too much. At a time like this, call for a short prayer and get to action. Sometimes there is a time, Ezra v'lo litzaka. The Gemara in Tainis says, there are times, for instance on Shabbat, when it's not the time for tzaka, for prayer. It's a time for action. There's a time to actually do something in the concrete kind of world, not in the mystical world, the realm of prayer. There's another idea that it's a matter of ishtadlus. It's a matter of you have to do your job. There's a Hasidic thought in terms of the previous verse where Moshe speaks to the Jews and he says, Hashem yilachem lachem, v'atem tacharishun. Literally it means God will fight for you and you should be quiet. However, the Hasidic interpretation, I heard this from my father of blessed memory, he says, Hashem yilachem lachem, God will give you the bread. Atem tacharishun, you do the plowing. And in many ways, whether that's the right interpretation of that verse, but in this verse, it's a similar idea. Do the plowing. Do something in the practical realm. And then the prayers will be answered. That faith that you show by doing the practical, that will bring about the salvation. It's an interesting question whether there ever comes a time when the time for prayer is over. Now it's the time for action. It seems that in our own times, modern era, when the Jewish people returned to the land of Israel, they were saying, Matitzak Ilai, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'Yisau. The time for prayer is always good. It's always good to pray. But in some very strange way, there's a limit. There's a time when that time is up. Now it's time to move forward. We have a promise. The Jews had a promise in those days that Hashem yilachem lachem, that God would fight for you. One commentator says, you know what? The Or Chaim says, it was another commentator. He said as follows. He said, you know what? The 10 commandments, the 10 plagues are continued here as well. When God promised to take the Jews out of Israel, to take us out of the land of Israel, to redeem us, to save us, to take us as his people, there's one continuity. And we don't need a separate prayer for the splitting of the sea. It's a continuation of the very first prayer, of the very first promise of the Jews to come into the land of Israel. That's why there's no separate Hallel, there's no separate song of thanksgiving on the seventh day of Pesach, because there's one thanksgiving for the redemption. That redemption started with the 10 plagues, it started with the Exodus from Egypt, and it continues through the end of the Exodus. The end of the Exodus is not over until the splitting of the sea, and therefore Hashem says, you don't need to pray. It's already done. We're already in the process. We've got to get out of this because I didn't take you out to die in the desert, God forbid. This is a continuation of what was going on with all the plagues. It's a continuation of the Exodus itself. So many interpretations and an intriguing idea. Is there a boundary to prayer? Is there a time when the prayer is over? It's time to take 3 steps back. Do we believe in constant prayer? There is an idea of I wish we'd just pray all day. And there's another idea that at some point it's finite. At some point you finished. Chana finished her prayers. She was not sad anymore. Her prayer, the limit of prayer was over. And now it's time to rejoice with the salvation that's going to come from it. Beautiful idea that there is a time. All of our prayers are already answered, and now it's time to move forward. Let us hope that time should come soon, indeed, when all the prayers will be answered. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfar Beth Lamed congregation for a discussion of Parshat Beshalach. Join us each week for a discussion of various parshiot, various holidays, how-to Judaism as well. And thanks to our producer, Jason Lefkowitz. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.